everyone. If we can change our criminal justice system, then we're going towards a place we can be proud of. Sometimes you may look at me and think I'm spoiling for a fight. Not all the time. But I'll tell you this, I'm gonna fight for the things that are worth fighting for. My mother used to tell me all the time, Christopher, be yourself. Because if you are, then you're not gonna have to worry tomorrow about remembering who you pretended to be yesterday. So ladies and gentlemen, this is it. What you see is what you get.
Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Christie.
Long walk to get up here. Thank you all for being here. It's a great crowd and great to be back in West Milford. You know, I said to the chief on the way in, he said, welcome back to West Milford, and I'm happy to be back. I was here the last time when I was campaigning for governor. Right near the end, I brought my friend Rudy Giuliani with me, and we campaigned here in West Milford. It was a great event, a great crowd, and it was great to have Mayor Giuliani here, and he's been such a role model for me on how to get in charge of a dysfunctional government and grab it by the lapels and start to try to wrestle it into where it needs to be. He did that for New York City. We all remember that, and he's been a great example for me. So I'm happy to be back. This is my 97th town hall meeting since I've been governor. Number 97 today. And you know, I started doing this, because when you become governor, when you're running, you don't get nearly as much attention as you get when you're governor. So when you're running, you're a challenger, you're running against an incumbent governor, every once in a while the press will show up, but not all that often. And you're traveling around with the few people that you have on your campaign staff, and they're mostly really enthusiastic young people, and they're helping to drive you around and take care of you when you're running off from one end of the state to the other. And then all of a sudden, election night comes, and you win. And, the first moment I knew that I was actually the governor-elect was we were in a hotel in Parsippany, and we were in one suite of rooms, and the lieutenant governor-elect was in the next suite of rooms next door. So after the Associated Press had called the race for us, I wanted to go down and congratulate Kim. So I opened the door of the hotel room and I went to walk out, and there were three guys in suits with wires in their ears standing there. The Executive Protection Unit of the State Police. And I said, hey fellas, how you doing? They said, sir, where are you going? So I was just going down the hall to see Kim. They go, very good. So I turned and walked down, and they followed me. And they've been following me ever since. And so what happens is they kind of, in some respects, take over your life. They live at our house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week over in Mendham. They're with us all the time. Everywhere I go, they're with me. They decide how I travel places. They decide what doors I go in. I never go in the front door anymore. I can't remember the last time I went in the front door any place. They always find these weird side doors or back doors for me to go in. There's like dark staircases where they're flashing flashlights around so I don't trip. And then all of a sudden you walk out, you go through a kitchen, almost always. There's some kitchen somewhere that you walk through. And then all of a sudden you come through a door and there's 700 people in front of you. And you don't know how the heck you got there. the point in telling you that is that you can get isolated. Because you don't travel anymore or walk anymore like you did before you got elected. And so what I said to my staff was, one of the things we have to figure out is how I don't get isolated in this job. I need to see the people of the state on a regular basis, and I need them to be able to interact with me. And not in some fake or phony way where they're lined up and I shake hands with them and take their pictures and then they walk away and they really only get to say, 3 seconds worth of something to me and then move on. I said, I need to have a longer interaction with people. So we came up with this idea 97 meetings ago. And the more I've done it, the happier I've been doing it because, I get a lot of really great interaction. And sometimes it's really entertaining too, depending upon what the questions are and how I react to them. But I'm really glad you're all here. So that's my long way of saying thank you for being here. You help keep me in touch with the people who put me here. And the biggest danger for a governor is to lose that touch, is to lose the feel for who you actually are there to serve. And so you all coming here helps me to do that very much. So you see the banner we have up talking about the middle class reform agenda. And I'm going to talk to you about the things that we need to get done between now and the end of the year to continue the progress we've made. But I want you to understand that for me, this is something that I grew up with. My parents were Newarkers. They lived in Newark most of their lives. They were born there. And I lived there till I was 5 years old, and we moved to Livingston. My dad worked at the Breyers ice cream plant in Newark, and he worked his way through Rutgers in Newark at night. He's the first person in his family to get a college degree. My mom went to Westside High School in Newark. She's the daughter of a single mother, and she didn't have the money to go to college, and so she never did. And my parents borrowed the money that they used to buy the house that they bought in Livingston. They even borrowed the down payment money from my two grandmothers, $1,000 each. They put a $2,000 down payment down on a $22,000 house. And my dad was an Army veteran, so he was able to get a GI mortgage. And, they struggled. And to meet the mortgage payments and pay the taxes and help to raise me and my brother and my sister. And after a while, they couldn't just do it on my dad's salary, so my mom had to go back to work while we were in junior high school because they needed the money to pay the bills. And so I know from my own personal experience, I went to college mostly on money that I borrowed and paid back for the 10 years after I graduated from law school and put myself through law school. Mary Pat and I paid for my law school after we got married. And so when I talk about, the middle class agenda and trying to make the state more affordable for folks, it's based upon the way I was raised. And I lived with those struggles. Unfortunately for me and Mary Pat now, which you all see this week is Mary Pat's favorite week of the year. This is the week when we release our tax returns. Mary Pat just loves this week, she really does. She gets to have everybody, at the supermarket or at the kids' soccer games, like they all see these reports in the newspaper about our tax returns, and you can't imagine the questions people ask. It's just great. Like they'll microanalyze like what charities we gave money to, and they'll say like to Mary Pat, well, why did you give more money to this than that? Well, I don't know. We like that charity, and they're nice people, and they'll say, well, how did you make this money here or that money there? Because imagine just having your tax returns printed in the newspaper. So you'll see that this week, and you'll see that, Mary Pat and I have done well. Well, I should really put it differently. For the record, 26th year in a row, Mary Pat will make more money than me. I married well. She worked really hard. She came from a family of 10 children. She's number 9 of 10. And her dad and mom worked really hard to raise all of them. And then she, put herself through college. We paid her loans off too. And she went and got her master's degree in business at night while she was working during the day. And she's had an incredibly successful career. And, You know, I had friends of mine, once my tax returns started getting released every year, who like now saw, oh man, Mary Pat does make more money than Chris, all right? And so then my friends would say to me, does it bother you that your wife makes more than you? This is like a little emasculating, you know, to have your wife make more than you. And I look at my friends and say, I got 3 words for you fellas, joint checking account. Money's all going the same place, baby. Equal access. I don't feel bad at all. I feel like I drafted a really good pitcher in high school, and damn, she turned out to be a major leaguer. But the things I want to talk to you about today that will make our state more affordable is something that I lived. I watched my father sit at the dining room table. Saturday was a really difficult day in our house typically because that's when my father would pay the bills. And he'd sit at the dining room table, and he's an accountant, and he'd lay all this stuff out. And you know, you'd walk through the dining room, and when you'd see him start like doing this, rubbing his head in between each bill, you knew it was time to go outside and play. Because things were gonna start to get ugly inside the house as he was gonna try to figure out how to make ends meet and talk to my mother about why certain things were bought and why'd you spend this money or why didn't you? And we lived that. And I know that families all across New Jersey are living that right now. The same way I lived it growing up in the 1970s in Livingston with my mom and dad. I know that there's plenty of people in this audience and friends and family that you know that are living the same thing. That you wonder how you're gonna make the mortgage payment every month. That you wonder whether you're gonna be able to put a little bit of money aside to pay for your kids' college. Whether you can afford to live here anymore. Or whether you're gonna have to pull up stakes and go someplace else after spending most, if not all, of your life here. And then who are you gonna leave behind? Are you gonna leave your children behind here as they're grown? Those things are things that you know, I know that my parents actively thought about. And fortunately for them, they were able to soldier through it. And my mom passed away 8 years ago, and she didn't die wealthy, and she didn't die with a lot of money in the bank, but she felt like she had gotten to be a huge part of her children's and grandchildren's lives, which is what she really wanted more than anything else. And my dad, who's still around, luckily, at 79 years old, still gets to be part of that too. But I know what a struggle it was for them, and I know what a struggle it is for you. And that's when I'm doing the things you see me doing, it's all about that. I mean, there's lots of different issues that we'll talk about that have lots of different effects on people's lives. But in the end, what you need to know that I'm pushing for every day is trying to make the lives easier for people like my mom and dad, who I know struggled so much to get to where they got to. So, you know, we talk about all the different reforms and stuff that we've done. And I think in the end, you sent me here in the first place because you felt like the government was out of control. For the 20 years before I became governor, state spending went up 320% in 20 years. It's an average of 16% a year, every year, for 20 years. In the 8 years before I became governor, taxes and fees got raised 115 times at the state level. I mean, that's a tax or fee increase every 25 days for 8 years. Every 25 days, the state government went into your pocket and took more money out for government. And once you had experienced those things, that huge increase in spending and that huge increase in taxes, I think finally he just said, listen, we need somebody who is gonna be tough enough to go in there and say, stop, enough. We're not gonna do this anymore. And make the hard decisions that need to be made to do that. So when we did things like pension and benefit reform, which hadn't been done in most places in the country when we did it, and you saw the folks protesting on the steps of the State House and yelling and screaming, and you had the national president of the CWA call me Adolf Christie, legitimately, called me Adolf Christie on the steps of the State House. What were we trying to do? if the reforms that we had done were not put into effect, and they're going to save $120 billion over the next 30 years by doing things like restricting cost of living adjustments on these pensions, like making sure that people pay more into their pension while they're working, making sure that if you retire early, there's a bigger penalty for that, and to increase the retirement age for public workers. You know, those four things, in essence, are going to save $120 billion for the taxpayers over the next 30 years, but also it's making the pensions more secure because we're starting to level out the money coming in and the money going out. Because, for instance, the teachers' pension fund, when I became governor, was funded at 52% of the amount of money they needed to pay the bills. I mean, we knew, and the actuaries told us that by 2018, that pension fund would be broke. So it's not just about saving money for all of you. It's also about keeping faith with the people who we promised that pension to. They need to know they're going to get it, and we need to keep that trust with them because they plan their whole lives based on that. So it's about doing both of those things. And think about it, just this year alone across the state, if we had not done the reforms, just this year property taxes would be $241 million higher if we had not done the reforms. And with that, there's even more good news about what's happening with property taxes in the state. And we're announcing $116 million today in additional savings to local governments statewide. Here's why. The savings are possible because of the reforms we put in place. 2% cap on property taxes. The property tax rates are starting to come in from across the state. They came in from Burlington County the other day, 1.7% increase countywide in property taxes. The cap's working. Now remember, property taxes went up 70% in the 10 years before I became governor. So you're having 7% a year average. Our Treasury Department are going to be sending new bills to your local governments. Here in West Milford, we'll send them to the township, the Board of Ed, and the Utility Authority. There'll be $232,000 in savings from the reforms we made just here in West Milford to those places. That's $232,000 that is not going to be added to your property tax bills. And across Passaic County, it's going to be about $7 million in additional savings that are going to come from the reforms that we've done. Not in cutting services, but in reforming the way government does business. So when we talk about this stuff, this is real savings that are happening because we've made difficult decisions. And there are going to be some people who are going to criticize those decisions and have criticized those decisions. But you know what? I didn't get elected to this job to become the prom king. All right? I'm not looking for everybody to love me and love every decision that I make. I think that's the one true way to fail, is to try to make everybody happy. I'm not going to make everybody happy. But what you will know is I'm going to try to make the best decisions I can to make the most people in the state better off than they were when I became governor. And there'll be some people who won't like it, and they'll yell and scream about it, and that's okay. That's what the state's all about. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love New Jersey. And I'll tell you, when people aren't happy with me, they let me know. I'll walk it down the boardwalks and people yell some stuff at me. And you may have seen that video this summer, I yell right back. You know, that's what you gotta do. And now, real quickly, the rest of the things that I want to get done, and then I'll get to your questions between now and the end of the year. And these are really, I swear, really common sense things. So we'll go through them really quickly. First is to make sure we plug some of the holes in the property tax cap I just talked about. Here's what some inventive mayors are doing. They have this 2% cap, right? Now they're saying, well, we'll charge fees, separate fees. We'll call it a garbage fee, a recreation fee, all these different fees so they can go around the cap. And we're sitting down in Trenton going, oh, wait a second. That's not what we intended to have happen. So the Senate in June passed a bill saying, if you want to charge fees in your town, that's fine, you can, but it's all got to fit under the 2% cap. No exceptions. For some reason, the Assembly didn't pass it. So for some reason, the Assembly didn't pass it. So all we need the Assembly to do when they come back to work, post the bill and vote it. That's it. You know, and what they're worried about is, the Assembly's worried, some of the mayors are upset about this. They're yelling at the Assembly. And the Assembly, they get weak in the knees when the mayors yell at them. I don't know what they're worried about. Fact is, the people of the state want their property taxes contained. They want their property taxes rolled back. And the only way to do that, by the way, is to spend less money. And so if you're going to continue to add fees to all this stuff, then we're never going to get this under control. So I need the Assembly to get their job done. The Senate did it. By definition, it's a bipartisan thing because the Democrats run the Senate. Steve Sweeney sponsored the bill in the Senate, the Democratic Senate president. I've said I'll sign it. Republicans voted for it. It was unanimously passed in the state Senate. Senator Panaccio's here today. He voted for it. He supported it. He was out there working hard for it. And I know Assemblywoman DeCroce is here. I know she's anxious to vote for it if they would just post it in her house. So we need to get that done. And that will make sure that you're not getting nickeled and dimed on the side. You know, it's not the right thing to do. Second, sick leave. Now you hear me talk about this for 2 years. In fact, I sent my bill 678 days ago to the legislature. And it's really simple. The bill says zero means zero. It says that sick leave should be for when you're sick. And it shouldn't be to get paid. Right now, everybody, get ready for this. The accumulated debt on municipalities for sick leave that's already been banked is $880 million. $880 million. So I sent the bill to the legislature, said, listen, I can't do anything about that $880 million. People have been promised it. That was the law. It was a mistake made by previous governors. But you know what? No more going forward. Let's not add to the problem, right? No more going forward. See, I love this. This is the way Trenton works. They sent me a bill back that said, you're right, Governor. Only $15,000 more for every public employee in the state. That's it. I'm like, no. I said zero means zero. So I vetoed it and sent it back saying zero. So then they came back to me and they passed a bill that said, how about 7,500 more? And I was thinking to myself, do I look like Monty Hall? And is this like, let's make a deal? No. This is a principle. We shouldn't be paying people for not being sick. I always thought the benefit of not being sick was not being sick. I didn't think you got paid for it too. And if you want to think about what this really, if I signed the bill they sent me for $7,500 more, it would add $3.25 billion to that $880 million number. $3.25 billion more. You want to know what this costs you? Costs you? How about in Parsippany, where Assemblywoman DeCroce is from? In Parsippany, you had 4 police officers retire at the same time. They received over $900,000 in sick leave payouts. The town did not have the money. They didn't have the cash on hand to pay it. So what did they do? They borrowed. They bonded to pay the sick leave payout. And Democrats in the legislature are sitting there now for 670 plus days with my proposal to say this should stop, and they won't do it. Now, I don't get this. I don't understand it. I don't understand, I've said in my sick leave bill, there should only be 2 uses for sick leave. Use it when you're sick, or you can donate your sick leave to a chronically or terminally ill coworker. That's a compassionate thing to do. You would think we could get that done in the next couple of months, right? When they finally get back from their long vacation, that we could finally get this done after the election. No one should be getting paid for not being sick, especially when all those people, by the way, are already receiving a taxpayer-funded pension. On top of that, they call it the boat check. Not me, them. Because it's the check they use to buy their boat when they retire. They call it the boat checks. We got to end boat checks, everybody. Third thing is, if we want to bring down property taxes, we have to have more shared services between towns. Now, typically when I say this, and I'm seeing it here, everybody's nodding. They're like, yep, that's right, Governor. And let me tell you this. In Patterson and Passaic, they should share some services. Here in West Milford, we're doing great. But in Patterson and Passaic, they're wasting money. Everybody wants the other town to do it, not them. Because they like their town, that's why they live here. So we'll use my town as an example, just to show you that I am willing to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm not afraid to go home after saying this. I live in Mendham Township in Morris County. Mendham Township is shaped like a horseshoe. Inside the horseshoe is Mendham Borough. Why? I have no idea. 5,000 people in Mendham Township, 5,000 people in Mendham Borough. Why isn't it just Mendham and 10,000 people? Let's not even go there. That's consolidation of towns. Let's not even go there yet. How about Mendham Township has a public library? That's nice. Mendham Borough has a public library. Okay. Both buildings are run down. And guess what they want to do? They both want a new library. Now I have to tell you something. This is 10,000 people. And 5,000 of those people are inside the horseshoe of the other 5,000 people. You would think, right, one library would be good enough for those 10,000 people. Like, do the books read smarter out of the Mendham Township Library than they do out of the Mendham Borough Library? And when it's proposed in our town that we build just one library building, the Mendham Borough people don't want to go to the Mendham Township Library. That's why I live in Mendham Borough. If I want to live in the township, I'd live in the township. I live in the borough. The Mendham Borough Police Department is closer to my house than the Mendham Township Police Department. So before I had the state police with me all the time, if I had a problem, I had to call the police, the logical thing would be call the borough police because they're like a mile away. No. If I call the borough police, they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, you live in the township. You need to call the township police. Yeah, but you're closer. Yeah, but you're in a different town. We're all in Mendham, dude. Come on, just come here. No. Each of them have their own police chiefs, captains, lieutenants, and, yes, you guessed it, they each have their own headquarters. And Mendham Township has an old rundown headquarters, and they need a new headquarters. So why don't we just consolidate the police and put them in the nice borough headquarters that are newer and more modern, have more technology? Oh, no. No, because Mendham Township needs their own police department. This is the last big reason, this along with education funding, the last big reasons why property taxes aren't under control here. We gotta start sharing these services, everybody. And we've tried to encourage towns to do this, and they don't wanna take the encouragement. So here's my idea, and this is one that I share with the Senate President again. This is a bipartisan idea. You wanna have your own thing? That's fine. You pay for it. And here's how we'll do it. We'll figure out how much you would save by sharing services with the town next door. And if you don't share services with the town next door, then we're gonna reduce your state aid by that much. Because state aid comes from everybody across the state. So why should the people in West Milford have to pay through your income taxes because in Mendham Township and Mendham Borough, we must have 2 libraries, okay? So now we'll really put the heat on the mayors and the council. You wanna have your own thing? God bless you, have your own thing. You go and explain to your residents why you have to pay more for it now, because we're gonna reduce your state aid by that much. Because I am tired of having people across this state pay for all of this excessive government we have, and just because people in a town want something more. Why do two towns next to each other have to have 2 CFOs? The money comes in, count the money, write the checks. You're kidding me, right? We need a CFO for every town. Mendham Borough needs their own CFO. Mendham Township needs their own CFO. All making 6-figure salaries? Really? So, seems to me that we should start doing this, and if you don't do it, you should be penalized for it. That's the only way people are gonna get it after a while. See, in New Jersey, we take any act of kindness as an act of weakness. So we gotta start getting tougher with folks around here. And the way we need to get tougher is, you want your own of everything, then you explain to the people in your town why their property taxes are going up because they're paying for their own of everything, because we'll reduce state aid. Something that needs to get done. If you want to get property taxes under control, that's what we have to do. We have to share more services. 566 towns in a state this size, all having their own thing, makes no sense. You know it, and I know it. But all of us have to be willing to make the sacrifice together to consolidate things, to make it cheaper, make it less expensive for us to be able to live here. Fourth, I know you're gonna find this hard to believe, but I think there needs to be some ethics reform in New Jersey. Now, this comes from my last job that I had for all of you as U.S. Attorney for 7 years. You know I put 130 Republicans and Democratic office holders in jail without a defeat during those 7 years. And I came to Trenton and I brought with me, spread throughout government, 24 former federal prosecutors who are spread all throughout state government. And one of the things we said was, we know what caused some of the problems in the cases that we did, and let's try to fix them now. That we're actually don't have to prosecute people to fix it, we can pass laws to fix it. So, what kind of things have I suggested? How about this? First, shouldn't one public paycheck be enough for anybody? Right? And shouldn't it just be one public paycheck enough for anybody? This dual office holding and dual public position holding is just wrong. And let me give you an example that's relatively close to here. Hudson County. Hudson County, this guy is the king, he's the champ. He's numero uno in New Jersey on multiple paychecks. This is Senator Nicholas Sacco. Now, Senator Sacco is a state senator, so he gets a salary for that. He is also the mayor of North Bergen, and he gets a salary for that. And where does he find the time? He is actually also the assistant superintendent of schools in North Bergen. So let's review, because it can get confusing. State senator, mayor, assistant superintendent of schools. His combined public salary for those three jobs, please, for those of you who are standing, hold yourself up next to the person next to you, $309,000 a year. $309,000 a year. And get ready, because Nick Sacco is going to be your best friend for the rest of his life, because his pension will be over $190,000 a year based on those salaries. Now, I have to tell you something. Nick Sacco, if he were George Washington, we shouldn't pay him $190,000 a year in pensions. If he were George Washington, he shouldn't get paid that. And let me tell you, I've met Nick Sacco. He ain't George Washington, okay? He ain't George Washington. Republicans and Democrats are both guilty of this, and it's got to stop. So we say one public paycheck should be enough for anybody. Nobody should be receiving two public paychecks. Second, how about this? Executive orders by governors going all the way back to Governor Byrne, and I signed one too, say that we're going to disclose everything about our finances. Not only us, but the lieutenant governor, all the members of my cabinet, and the members of my senior staff will fill out detailed disclosure forms every year so that you know where our money comes from, where we invest our money, what money we make from our investments, what we have in terms of real property, what homes do we own, all the rest of that. You know all of it. And my staff and my cabinet fills those out every year. And we do it voluntarily. We do it because the governor signed an executive order. And every governor, Republican and Democrat, has done that since Governor Byrne. This term, the legislature decided that that wasn't good enough, that they didn't trust me that I would actually do it, so they wanted to pass a law that required me to do the very thing I said I would do in the executive order. Well, besides hurting my feelings, I thought maybe this is showing that the legislature is concerned about financial disclosure. Maybe they've seen Jesus on this one, and they want financial disclosure. So there's a little tool that you have as governor called the conditional veto. And what that allows you to do is to take a bill passed by the legislature and send it back to them with helpful suggestions as to how it could be better. And then they have to decide to vote yes or no on that bill. They can't change it again. They got to accept my changes or not accept my changes. So 770 days ago, I sent that bill back to them, and I only made one change to it. I said, all the rules that apply to me apply to you. I'm still waiting. 770 days later for it to come back from the legislature. And by the way, you need it from them more than you need it from us. See, because all of us in the executive branch, we're not allowed to have another job. The law says one job, that's it. No earned outside income of any kind. The legislature, all part-time. They have as many jobs as they want to have. You need to be concerned about where that money's coming from. Who's paying them and why? And what are they doing for the money? See, me, you know, you pay my salary, that's the only job I've got. And since I released my tax returns, and because my forms include disclosure for my wife and my children, you know it all about me. You know about this much about the legislature. And so I guess I was wrong. I guess they don't feel like they really want to disclose their finances. They just want me to disclose mine. Well, that's fine. I'll disclose all mine. But you need to demand, given the decisions they're making down there on your behalf, that you know where all their money's coming from and from who and why and how much, especially when they only have a part-time job in the legislature. So those are the ethics reforms I want to do. I don't think any of those seem to be all that awful. And lastly, but certainly not least, it's about cutting taxes. Now, New Jersey still has the third highest taxes in America on income. And I said back in January, I wanted to cut people's income taxes. And right after I said it, the Democrats said, yeah, we want to cut income taxes too, but not the same way the governor wants to do it. So from January to about May, we fought about which way to do it. But there seemed to be no doubt that it was going to get done. So finally in May, I decided, listen, I'm worrying here too much about winning and not enough about getting some of your money back to you. So I went to the Senate president, who had made one proposal. The speaker had made another proposal, and I had mine. I went to the Senate president and I said, Steve, I agree to your proposal. I thought that would do it, right? I totally gave in. I just said, I'll take yours. And he looked at me and said, let me get back to you. So what do you mean, let me get back to you? I'm agreeing to yours. Look how bipartisan I'm being. Look at me reaching my hand out across the aisle and saying, I'll take your idea. Even though I don't think it's as good an idea as mine, I'll take it, because what's more important is that we get money back to the people of this state so we can keep this economy that's starting to recover, recovering even more. Now, they come back to me, and you know what they say? We don't have the money for a tax cut. Now, this is really interesting, since all the money comes from you in the first place. So what do you mean you don't have the money to do it? First of all, we have the money to do it. Secondly, if they think that we don't have the money, how about we spend less on something else so you can get the money back, all right? And they're trying to say, and this is the best part of it and why I like to end with this, because this will really show you what it's like to be in Trenton. It is Alice in Wonderland, everybody, okay? They said, see, listen to us, people of New Jersey, because we're being fiscally conservative. Okay, these are the guys in the main who raised spending 320% over the last 20 years. These are the guys who raised taxes and fees 115 times over the last 8 years. These are the guys who last year's budget proposed a budget and sent it to me that was $1 billion more than the revenue we had coming in. And I had a line item veto out $1 billion, $1 billion in spending, right? Those are the guys who this year sent me a budget with nearly $400 million in spending more than we had revenues coming in, and at the same time said to me, and we think your revenue estimates are too high. Then why did you spend $400 million more? Why didn't you spend $400 million less? Here's why. All they care about is spending your money. That's all they care about. They care about spending your money. They think they know how to spend your money better than you do. And so that's why the budgets have gone up as much as they had. That's why taxes have gone up as much as they had, because they believe in a fundamentally different thing than I do. See, they believe that government should spend your money and that they know how to do it better than you do. I believe you worked for it, you earned it, you should keep more of it. And man, I've watched government now from the inside for 3 years. You know how to spend it better than we do. So, And the average family under the tax cut plan that I agreed to with the Democrats, that they now are reneging on, would give you back an average of $775 more in your pocket each year. I mean, that's a lot of money to folks who are trying to make ends meet. So I want to end where I started, which is that makes a difference in people's lives. And I am prepared to cut spending, however much I need to cut spending, and cut government even more than we've cut it already, in order to make sure that you can get your tax cut. And remember this, the budget I signed this year after I made the line item veto cuts is less in 2013, fiscal 2013, than we spent in 2008 or 2009. I mean, we've made government significantly smaller. Now, while doing that, we're spending $8.8 billion this year on aid to K-12 education. That's the most money any governor has ever spent on aid to K-12 education. We spend more today on supporting our hospitals across New Jersey than we have at any time in our state's history. We spend more on helping families who have children with autism than we've ever spent in New Jersey. We spend more today on federally qualified health clinics, the places where those folks who are either uninsured or on Medicaid can go to get regular medical care rather than having to go to an emergency room. And we have them in all 21 counties in the state. I've increased spending there 25% because in these tough times when lots of people have lost their jobs and they lost their medical insurance, they need not to go to an emergency room, but go to a doctor that they can see on a regular basis who knows them, who knows their family, and can treat them the best way. I'm spending more money on all those things, yet still spending less money than we spent 5 years ago. That means we made choices of what's most important to us. And I believe educating our children, protecting the most vulnerable, who are in a bad way right now, are the priorities that we should have as a government. And I'm spending money on that. But I refuse to continue to spend money in a wasteful way on every dopey program that they come up with down there. And now they don't want to cut your taxes. And they're going to try to convince you the governor who cut that spending, who hasn't raised taxes in 3 years, first time we've had 3 years in a row of not raising taxes at the state level in over a decade, that the guy who did that is fiscally irresponsible and they're fiscally responsible. I mean, it is Alice in Wonderland. Up is down, down is up. And they think if they say it often enough that they'll be able to convince you. I know better. You've lived here a bit. You're smarter than that and you've seen what's happened. I'm the one fighting to keep spending lower. I'm the one fighting to lower taxes. I'm the one getting this government under control and putting us back on track to really grow again in this state. And they're the ones who want business as usual. So here's the bottom line. This fight over the next 3 months for this middle-class reform agenda is about finishing the job of making New Jersey more affordable again. And I'm for it, and they're for the old ways, and they're for the old days. And we remember what those were like. And I don't think we want to go back to it. So that's why I'm fighting for this stuff, and you may see me, I hate to tell you this, but I'm tired of being nice. I'm tired. I am tired of being nice about this. So when the election is over, because no one's going to pay attention for the next 3 weeks, everyone's going to be paying attention to who we're going to elect as president and the other races on the ballot. But when we get done with that, 3 weeks from now, we're going to get to work. And I'm going to be all over these characters to say this stuff makes sense to people all across the state and we need to get it done. And if you don't get it done, then you're going to have to answer to them. And I will run all over this state making sure that everybody hears that message because that's my job. My job is to represent you. There's never been every doubt in my mind who I represent when I walk in that building every day. It's not some special interest. It's the people who voted for me and put me there. And that's why I don't care whether on any one day or another I'm particularly popular. What I want is to earn your respect because I did the job you gave me to do. And that's what we're going to try to do over the next 3 months is to finish that part of this job. So Let's get to the fun part of the program. Fun part of the program is you get to ask questions and I get to answer them. Here are the 4 rules of the Christie Town Hall meetings. They remain unchanged for 97 town hall meetings in a row. For those of you who are here again, and I see a number of you who have been to other town hall meetings, we lovingly refer to you as repeat offenders. Bear with me as I go through the rules that you now know by heart. Rule number 1 is please raise your hand and I will call on you. Do not yell out questions. I will not answer yelled out questions because that's just rude. So let me call on you, and when I do call on you, here comes rule number 2. Wait for the microphone. There's 2 guys. This is a pretty big room. We got over 700 people here this morning. I got 2 guys running around with microphones. So wait for the microphone to get to you so that I can hear you and the rest of the audience can hear you. And when you get the microphone, tell me your name and where you're from. So I don't have to say, hey, you in the orange shirt. I can actually, call you by your name. Third rule is not really a rule. The third rule is a bit of advice from doing 96 of these before today. When you get this microphone in your hand, you will feel, I do see you, I swear, but we're not ready to call on anybody yet. When you get this microphone in your hand, you will feel an indescribable but undeniable pull to give a speech. Take my word for it, it happens. It's gravitational. You won't be able to describe it, but it will happen to you. And I will listen to a little bit of your speech. If you feel that indescribable, undeniable pull, I will listen to a little bit of it. But after a while, I'm gonna say, okay, I get it. What's the question? And it's not because I don't want to listen to your speech, it's because we got a bunch of people here this morning. I'd like to get to as many questions as I can. Fourth and final rule. For those of you who have not been here before, you may have seen some of my town hall meetings excerpted on the TV news or on the internet, on YouTube, and you may have seen some of my more colorful interactions with my people. Now, here's the bottom line. I'm sure that there are people in this room today who disagree with me on one or more topics, and that's fine. And if I call on you and you have a disagreement, that's great, I want to hear it. And if you do so in a reasonable and respectful way, you will get a reasonable and respectful disagreement in return from me. However, we've got a number of cameras here today and a bunch of reporters, and if today is the day you decide that because of that you want to show off for your friends, if today's the day you decide, what the hell, let's take the governor of New Jersey out for a walk, and you know what I mean by that. If you decide that today's the day you want to throw some abuse, it's okay. I want you all to understand something though. We're all from New Jersey, all right? We're all from New Jersey, and you know what that means. If you give it, you are getting it right back. So let's get going. Yes, sir. In the brownish shirt with the beard.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
First off, I want to thank you to West Milford and thank you for all you've done for our state. But here we were faced with a dilemma with our tax increase that just came across the town. Myself, I was increased $40,000 on my small business of a mini warehouse project. A lot of others here, restaurant owners, were completely blindsided by increases of $15,000. Businesses are going out of business. Our elderly are taxed out of this town, the people who built this town. And yet the town consistently buys properties, takes them off the tax roll. And an interesting fact is your library issue. They want to build a new $5 million library. The townspeople had voted no on it 2 times, but they moved forward. And it just as you said on our tax bill, we have a library tax. Most people aren't aware that we've been taxed. They overfunded by $300,000 a year for the last 12 years. The people said, no, we don't want it, we don't need it. We have a library. We have a new library next door in Ringwood. We have libraries all over. It's a perfect example of what you're saying. We have town here that is spending money, buying properties left and right, taking them off the tax roll and passing the burden on to the people.
Yep.
And right now, the elderly are moving out. The young are moving out. And the township businesses are suffering, and they're going to have to move out because they can't afford it.
Yep.
What can you do about this? The
Well,
2% tax is next year, the cap. This year, my taxes went up 60%.
Well, your taxes went up that much because they must have done a reassessment, and that's what they did. And that's the way a lot of towns are getting around the cap too, is they're doing reassessments. So a few things I can say to you about this. First is on all the points you made, the library tax, the overfunding and hoarding of that money and all the rest of that stuff, That is all stuff that some towns have done, and it contributes to the increased property taxes. And we're sitting down with the legislature trying to figure out ways to deal with each one of those problems. Because you know what happens. Every time we put a cap on one problem, they try to find another way, like the library tax, right? And that's why now I want this bill passed to say no outside fees unless they fit under the cap. So it's a constant struggle, and sometimes you wonder with these local officials, who are they working for? Who are they working for? And I get very frustrated by it. Because I'm down in Trenton trying to get the job done here and doing some really tough things, and then they find a way around it. And I understand your frustration about it, and it seems to me that the amount of money you're talking about that these assessments went up are crazy. So I don't know if I can do anything about it, but here's what I am going to do to see if I can. The commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, who oversees municipalities, he's going to come make a visit to West Milford, and we're going to look at the books in West Milford, because this just doesn't sound right. And here's one thing I hope you've learned about me. I am not a member of the club. See, what happens is elected officials become members of the club and they look the other way. Local officials do things, well, he's, I wouldn't do it, but he's a member of the club, she's a member of the club. We kind of look the other way. I had never had an interest in being a member of the club. I'm not a member of the club now. And I don't know whether the law permits me to fix this problem in West Milford, but let me tell you something. The hood is going to be opened, and the state mechanics are going to be looking under the hood in West Milford and looking at these books and asking some questions. So thanks for raising the issue. Yes, sir. Yep.
First off, I like your style.
Thank you.
I live in Pompton Lakes, in the area that has homes being bought out. As of, I guess, 6 or 8 weeks ago, the funding had been turned over to the State Police Office of Emergency Management, which in turn is supposed to be passed on to the town to proceed with the buyouts.
Yep.
Can't get a good answer from anybody. My life and all the other people that are involved in it is on hold. Can't buy a house, can't look for a house until we get rid of the one we're in now, which is underwater every time a squirrel goes in the river. Anything you can do to get those funds released so we can get on with our lives.
Find out where they have been. So he's going to give you his card. You're going to send him your contact information. I'm going to go back to Trenton and ask Superintendent Fuentes what's going on, and then we're going to answer you back. All right? You got it. Rule number 2, wait for the microphone.
That's right, rule number 2. Hi, I'm Susan. And thank you for letting me ask a question. I'm from Sussex County, which is very Republican, and I know you keep saying they. I am a Democrat.
Yep.
Okay. I like what you say about shared services. I totally agree.
Yep.
Okay. What I'm seeing, though, often up in my neck of the woods where Republicans run the show is our taxes aren't going down, taxes are going up. I'm seeing the double positions, public service, the whole bit, lots of government, lots of members of the club.
Yeah.
And that's not our side, that's that side. So I guess what I'm saying
when I say
is
they, let me make clear. When I say they, I mean the Democrats in the legislature. When I'm talking about they, because those are the people I have to deal with every day. But let me make really clear that New Jersey didn't get into this circumstance in anything but a bipartisan way, okay? The problems we find ourselves in, and this is what happens in, at times in places like Sussex and other counties like Hudson or Camden or Essex or Sussex or Warren, where there's one party rule, okay? It's not the way our system's supposed to work, because you don't have the appropriate checks and balances. People aren't checking up on each other. The club becomes clubbier. So let me be really clear with everybody about this. When I was talking about they, I'm talking about the Democrats in the legislature who I have to deal with every day about these policies. But you are absolutely right to point out that at the local and county level, that these problems have existed and continued under both parties, and that you have Republican mayors who are charging these side fees, the same way you have Democratic mayors who are charging the side fees. And so, you know, my battle is against local and county government that isn't being responsible and responsive to the people of the state who, they're in the main the ones charging the property taxes. Your property taxes don't come from the state. Your property taxes come from your local government, your school board, and your county government. And so I want you to continue, but I want you to know right up front, I definitely use the pronoun. When I use the pronoun, I meant talking about the legislature, but both parties have caused problems in this state, especially at the local and county level.
I appreciate you saying that, and you're right about one-party rule. I actually have stepped up and I'm running for freeholder up there. But, you know, I understand it's one-party rule, but I agree the checks and balances are very important. Yep. Because I'm a New Jerseyan too.
Yep,
and
there's no doubt.
I agree with you, and thank you.
You're very welcome, thank you. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Hi there, number 2. There you go.
Hello, Governor. My name is Steve. I want to thank you for doing a great job for New Jersey. As you know, in West Milford, I want to ask you a question about the Highlands Preservation Zone. West Milford is 100% in the preservation zone. I'm all about water conservation and, you know, and saving the water, which we don't even really use. But it's very restricted, and, you know, we're getting taxed regularly. We need some tax relief for the property that we really can't use. We can't develop it. We really can't do much with it. It's very restricted.
Yep.
And we're really not getting a lot of tax relief for, you know, we're getting taxed the same amount as if we were allowed to use our property, and we're not.
Yep. Well, let me tell you, the Highlands bill, if it had actually been implemented the way it was supposed to be, may not have been the worst idea in the world. Close. But may not have been the worst idea in the world. The way it's been implemented is clearly one of the worst ideas that's come down the pike. Because remember, the deal Governor McGreevey made with all of you was, we will preserve this land and you will be compensated for it, right? And no one, and here we are now, nearly 10 years later.
Correct.
And no one is being compensated anywhere near what the value they have lost has been. And so that's why I've been appointing new people to the Highlands Commission. And lots of pushback from Democrats on the people I'm putting on the Highlands Commission. Because I want people on the Highlands Commission who are now going to try to, actually, if we can't change the law, which the Democrats in the legislature don't want to do, let's implement the law. And let's start compensating people for the values that they've lost in their property, which other people in the state are benefiting from the clean water they're getting from here in other parts of the state. So, you know, I would like to change the law, but that not being possible at the moment, given the makeup of the legislature, I'm trying to change the Highlands Commission so that they'll start to pay more attention to the folks who have lost value in what, for most of us, is our single largest asset, which is the property that we own. The home we own, the property that we own.
I agree with you 100%. So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I just hope we could hang in there and hold on to our properties.
I hope you can too. And listen, because, I mean, let's face it, this is part of the politics of it. Part of the politics of it was that this was passed by a Democratic legislature and a Democratic governor, and we had nothing but Democratic governors since then and Democratic legislatures who, in the main, took property from Republican areas to benefit Democratic areas. That's what they did. And so don't be surprised that they haven't changed it, because it doesn't serve their political purposes. And so now I'm looking at the landscape and saying, how do I try to change it to make sure that we have clean water in the state? Because everybody wants us to have a clean drinking water supply. Whether you live in West Milford or whether you live in Newark, you want clean drinking water for yourself and for your family. But there's got to be a way that we can do this without having the effect that it's having on folks like you, and you represent millions of other people who are being affected the same way. So that's why I'm trying to change the Highlands Commission. I put some new members on there. That's why they have a new focus on trying to ease some of the restrictions where appropriate, and also to try to come up with recommendations to me for a funding mechanism to be able to start to compensate people in the way that Governor McGreevey promised in 2003 but never followed through with. So Yeah, believe me, I'm with you. And I live in Morris County, and a lot of our county is within that zone as well. And so I hear from neighbors and friends all the time about the same problem. So I'm working on it. I can't change the law because the legislature won't change the law. So I'm trying to work through the executive branch to ease some restrictions, to find a funding source, to be able to compensate people so that we can do some of what was intended there rather than completely ignore all of you, which is what's happened for the better part of the last 9 years.
West Milford is all about water preservation. Unfortunately, we're 100% in the preservation zone.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
And there's a number of towns that are 100% in the preservation zone who are absolutely feeling the same thing. So I'm working on trying to make it better. If I can get some cooperation from the legislature, that would be helpful. I'm not holding my breath waiting for that, so I'm trying to work around it with the people that I put on the Highlands Commission to loosen the rules a little bit to allow people that get some of their value back out, whether it's through limited development or other steps that would ease those restrictions a bit, and then find a funding mechanism to try to make up the gap.
Good luck. And
thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks for raising it. I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. I'm standing on the aisle.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Ms. Shalina T. from Paramus County Committee, and I really enjoyed what you had to say about your reform agenda. Just want to make mention, Paramus has had 0 increase in taxes for the past 2 years, which I'm very proud of.
Good, it should be.
I would also like to extend to you a visit to our town, and I welcome you anytime to give some sort of enlightenment to our public.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I've been to Paramus a couple of times, but I'm happy to come back again. And we'll see which number town hall that'll be to come. I don't think I've done a town hall in Paramus yet, so maybe we'll come to Paramus and do one. But congratulations to your local governing body, which I know is a bipartisan group as well. I know there are Republicans and Democrats both, because I've been up there to your meetings. I know they're both Republicans and Democrats, and to get a 0% tax increase 2 years in a row on your property taxes shows the cap is working and shows that the local officials are working together to make sure that they don't lay this burden on the property owners in their town, especially when the economy's so bad. So send a congratulations from me back up to those folks. It's really job well done. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Yes, ma'am, in the red, right here. Yep.
Thank you very much. My question is about health care. I'm a small business owner. I've been struggling for 16 years maintaining a business at the cost of high premium health care each year. It doesn't go down, it's been going up. Each year I review my premiums and my coverage, and I have to compromise. Each time I compromise, I'm paying more and more in premium a year, which now I'm at a point where I can actually, the annual premium, it could be a salary for someone that I can employ, but I can't because I have to pay this exorbitant amount. What can the state do for small business owners like myself to help with the health care cost?
Well, listen, we're going to have to make some choices.
I make a lot of choices every year.
I mean the state has to make some choices, not you. Okay. We're going to have to make some choices. I mean, listen, New Jersey has more mandates on what has to be offered in health insurance policies than almost any state in America.
Right.
And as you can imagine, every mandate that you layer on raises the cost. Now, you might recall back 3 years ago when I said we should look at those mandates, Governor Corzine put commercials all over the television set saying, I wanted to deny women mammograms. Completely untrue. I wanted to give people choice about what kind of policies they want or need. But that's the kind of rhetoric that happens in these discussions about health insurance, because folks want to have coverage for everything and they want the price to go down. It's just not the way it works, at least not under the current system. So at the state level, what we have to decide is there's a few ideas that could help this, allowing out-of-state companies to come in and compete, allowing trade associations to put together larger groups to buy insurance, which we don't permit now. These are all ideas that, we're looking at and that I think we're going to have to deal with in the next year. The problem has been in trying to implement some of these new changes is the overhang of Obamacare, because when we didn't know whether it was going to be in place or not, and we still don't know, whether it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, it's difficult to start to make those changes and then have to make new changes again when Obamacare gets implemented in 2014, if that's what happens. And so my position on this has been, let's wait 3 more weeks. If, in fact, the president's reelected in 3 weeks, then we know that Obamacare is going to be implemented and that we're going to have to make these type of decisions with that as a backdrop. If Governor Romney's elected in 3 weeks, then we know that Obamacare will be repealed, and then there has to be a whole different set of choices that we have to make. So for someone like you who's been struggling with this problem for 15, 16 years, I hate to say wait and see, but I got to tell you the truth. I'm not going to be in a position to make any decisions for at least 3 more weeks. So let's wait to see what happens in 3 weeks. Then we can make intelligent decisions and only have to make them once, rather than make one sooner and then maybe have to change them based on the result of an election. But if we don't allow for larger groups to get together, to be able to buy more efficiently, spread the risk out, don't let out-of-state companies come in and compete, it's going to become harder and harder for New Jersey to control their health care costs. And it's not only private insurance, but Medicaid is eating up a larger and larger part of our budget at the state level, because these costs just continue to rise, both in terms of paying the providers and the way folks utilize their health care as well. So I hear that frustration all over New Jersey. Hopefully that after the election we'll be able to make some decisions that will bring some new energy to this, either in conjunction with or in replacement of Obamacare, and then we can move from there. So. All
right. Well, thank you. Well, after 3 weeks, who do I contact?
What was that?
After 3 weeks, and depending on the presidential election, who do I contact?
Oh, he's going to give you his card. He's going to give you his card, and then you send your contact information to our Office of Constituent Relations, and then they're here. They're all walking around. There's Gene Ashmore, who runs our Office of Constituent Relations in the back, and they'll get back in touch with you to talk about what our plans are and get any suggestions you have as a small business person for us. Okay. All right? Thank you very much. This is the lady whose hand's been up since I was on Rule 2.
Thank you. 2 hours of sleep. We got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Stand up, Patricia Waiters. We're not looking for the middle class dream. Her life is being destroyed in Hudson County. My life was being destroyed in Hudson County. I got $15,000 of Medicaid fraud. That's where your tax dollars are going. We need you, Mr. Christie. We need criminal prosecution. We need it in Hudson County now. They almost murdered me in Hudson County. We don't have a prosecutor. We have a co-conspirator. I asked Robert Menendez for help when he was my congressman before he was a senator. So don't tell me they almost murdered me in Jersey City. Okay, I've got police threatening me. I've got judges lying. We need you now, Mr. Christie. We need criminal prosecution in Hudson County now. Stand up, Patricia. Stand up.
Okay.
We need your help now.
Well, seems like her name's Patricia.
Patricia Waiters.
All right. So seems like Patricia has a whole load of papers there.
Comes down to a single word, help.
Well, listen, it doesn't come down to a single word, okay? Because no problem, yours or anybody else's, is ever that easy. It's never that easy. And I'd love to be able to say, no problem, I'm going to come take care of these SOBs tomorrow for you, okay? But I first got to figure out what the facts are. And as long as I only hear a brief bit from you, I can't figure out what the facts are. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get the information from Patricia. We're going to give it to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General's office is going to reach out to you and Patricia, bring you in for an interview, hear all the facts, and then the Attorney General, as is appropriate, not the governor, because as much as I love to mess around in this stuff, because it was my old job, I got to remind myself all the time I'm not a prosecutor anymore. So I'm going to give this to Attorney General Chiesa. His folks are going to call you to Trenton, have a meeting with you, and then we're going to try to figure out what we can do to help. But first, we got to know all the facts, all right? They're coming around. They're racing. Uh-huh.
Governor, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
My name is Greg Poff. I'm the business administrator for the Township of Rockaway. And I want to share some good news with you because I know that there's been a lot said about local governments. Working with the mayor and council in Rockaway over the past 5 years, we've been able to reduce our workforce by 12%. We've been able to negotiate away with all but our police unions the township's obligation to pay for lifetime health insurance benefits. And I'm also pleased to report that Rockaway is continuing its reputation for providing public health services to other Morris County communities, with 2 more agreements coming on at the first of the year. So local governments hear you, and we're doing the best that we can with the tools available to us to make those changes. The thing that I would ask you, and I know it was an issue as you put forth your toolbox, is to continue to press the legislature for both civil service and collective bargaining reform, because as the issue of shared services and consolidation of services continues to be brought up, Rockaway Township as a civil service community consistently finds itself hamstrung in being able to work with our neighbors who are not in the civil service system. And also when we've approached other local governments about sharing services, and while law enforcement is particularly attractive, there's real savings in public works.
Yep.
But in a public works, one of our neighboring communities, a laborer makes $30,000, where in Rockaway Township, a laborer makes $60,000. So you can imagine as a business administrator the difficulty that I find trying to reconcile those things in wanting to provide services for another local government, but finding difficulties through the collective bargaining process and the civil service process.
Well, first of all, congratulations for doing the stuff you're doing in Rockaway, and that shows that when local officials want to get it done, they can figure out a way to get it done. On civil service reform, the good news is in the shared services bill, there is a provision for the temporary suspension of civil service when 2 towns are putting together a shared services agreement. And so while that won't eliminate civil service completely, which is what I would prefer, it will allow for a temporary suspension of civil service so that the civil service rules are not an impediment to you being able to share services. So that's within the shared services bill. I didn't mention it because it's a little bit in the weeds. Guys like you and I get it. A lot of people will be like, whatever, Governor, sounds great. Second, on collective bargaining reform, I have to say I think we've done a lot on collective bargaining reform. You now have a 2% cap on the interest arbitration awards, and you have a rocket docket on the interest arbitration awards that makes everything have to happen in 90 days. And I've spoken to mayors across the state who are saying now they're coming to agreements not only with their civil workers, but also with their police and fire because of this new 2% cap, because of the restrictions on interest arbitration awards. And so I know it's not a perfect solution, but it has really helped a lot of towns across the state in terms of reforming the arbitration system and making collective bargaining more possible. Because in the end, especially for police and fire, if they know that the interest arbitration award that's going to come to them, if they fail with collective bargaining and take it to arbitration, is capped at 2%, everybody knows what the playing field is. And so it makes collective bargaining significantly easier and I think better to accomplish, and give you the opportunity to trade off different things in return for other items that they might want to get or keep. So I think on the arbitration side and collective bargaining side, we've done about as well as we're going to do. I hope on the civil service side we'll get the shared services bill passed, and that'll allow for the suspension of civil service for towns that are engaged in sharing services, putting together shared services agreements, so that doesn't be as an impediment to them sharing the services.
Would continue to push when the arbitration reform is set to expire that the legislature would reconsider it, simply because Rockaway Township has found itself in the unenviable position of having missed the opportunity that it went into effect after we were already in agreement, and it will expire before we're back in negotiations.
It doesn't sunset till July of 14, so I'm not going to deal with the July 14 problem quite yet. We got a couple other things we got to get accomplished before then, but it's absolutely an important tool, and I think most mayors throughout the state will be coming down to the legislature saying they need to keep this in place because it's really made collective bargaining significantly fairer in the state than it was before, and that benefits the towns and it benefits the taxpayers. So thanks for raising the issues. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am, right there. Hold on, Judy. Get the microphone.
I've got a big mouth, and a lot of people
Me
in
too,
West Milford
Judy,
know
but
it.
you know what? We still like those microphones.
I know. My problem is with the taxes, and I have a few questions.
Where do you live, Judy?
West Milford, 673 Mackapin Road. Last year, Newark paid $1.6 million to West Milford in taxes. Came to $97.08 per acre. This year, they did appeal. This year, they're paying $822,107 in taxes, which amounts to $49.88. Now, they use our water. They open their fire hydrants. They also waste our water. And we have to be very careful about how we use our water because most of the people in West Milford have wells. When the water table goes down and those reservoirs are low, a lot of people in West Milford lose their wells. That means we have to drill another well. Yeah, I have an 8-acre parcel, which is wetlands and Rock Mountain. My tax is almost $5,000, which comes to $600 per acre. And on my business, I went from just under $30,000 to $48,000, a jump of $18,000. I appealed, came down about $2,000. That's nothing. I'm a restaurant on a back road, open 3 days a week. Yet I employ about 20-something people from West Milford. A lot of them students, a lot of them college students, high school students. They're all depending on my business to help them get through with their education. What is going to happen with that watershed? Can't we do something with the water that they take from us? Because we are actually starving at times for water. And yet they're using it a lot of times very foolishly, taking advantage. What are we going to get back? When is it our turn? I mean, I'm not the only one. In fair and equitable, our taxes are anything but fair and equitable in West Milford. Homeowners went down, and they're glad because they think they're saving. Do you people realize that when I go out of business, when Tom goes out of business, when Mary Ann goes out of business, that you people are going to have to make up those taxes? I've been a business owner in West Milford for 40 years, and we are on the verge of losing our business. We need help, and I'm not alone. There's people moving out of their homes. 330-something homes are up for sale. I don't know how many are in foreclosure. People have actually walked away from their homes with nothing because they can't afford West Milford. You know, kids can't find jobs. Marion and I and other business owners, we do our best to keep these kids working, to keep local people working. We have no businesses in our town. You want everything to leave West Milford and go someplace else? I can't move my place because it's too big, and I'm too old. But I'd like to stay in business for a few more years at least. Yep. And so would a lot of other people. Marianne just started her business 9 months ago, and she doesn't know if she's going to make it. And she's doing a fantastic job. She's on Route 23, and still the business isn't always there because we don't have the traffic. I have very little traffic. I can sit in my window and look out the window and see that road, and I monitored it about a month ago, and I have an average of about 8 cars or less a minute passing my place in the afternoons. And those people aren't coming to my restaurant. Even if I was open, they wouldn't be. They're going down to Butler. They're going to Wayne. They're going shopping someplace else. Because West Milford has nothing to offer them, and we're going to have even less. Governor Christie, please help us.
Well, I'm glad to hear all that you just said, and my response is the same to you as it was to the first gentleman who raised this. I mean, one of the reasons I like to come out to these different towns is that you find out things that are happening in these towns that you would never find out sitting in Trenton. So, I mean, there's 2 ways to approach this, right? If you're a politician, I'm a trained lawyer, which means that I can make up a convincing answer at a moment's notice, right? And I could do that. What I'm going to tell you is that I didn't know any of this until I came here today. And so we're sending the DCA commissioner up here to look at what's going on in West Milford, and he's going to come back to me with answers about it. One of the scariest things about being governor is that there's 8.8 million people in this state and probably an equal number of problems. And you're never going to know all of them off the top of your head. And if you try to fake it, people are going to know it. So I didn't know about this until today. One thing you can count on me to do, though, is now that I know about it, we're going to try to deal with it. And I don't know, you know. Go ahead.
40 years ago, my taxes were $5,600. Since then, in the past 40 years, they've risen to $48,000, and I just got the appeal for about $2,000 down to around $46,000. Right. That's a really big jump.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm on a back road. The thing is, Newark uses our water. I understand we can't tax water, but can't we put a usage charge on each bill that goes out to those that are using it? If $1 or $2 with the millions of people that are using our water, if they got $1 or $2 a month put on their bill as a usage charge, wouldn't that give us about $40 million for surrounding towns? And someone said to me, the people in Newark can't afford a raise that $1 or $2 on their tax bill. I said, well, if they can sit out there on their stoops in the summertime, smoking pot, drinking booze, on food stamps and welfare.
Okay.
And we have to suffer with an $18,000 increase.
Listen, give the microphone back, okay? Because we're in speech mode now. And I was with you for most of your talk, okay? But let me just say this. It is unfair, with all due respect, to characterize every person who lives in Newark as, well, that's what you just did, as sitting on their stoop and smoking pot and collecting food stamps. Because I spent a good amount of time in Newark, and I know that not every family is like that. And there's lots of families there that are struggling like families here. And we do not win in this state. We do not win in this state by pitting New Jerseyans against New Jerseyans. We don't win. It may get a lot of applause, but we don't win that way. My point to you is I hear your problems. I hear them, and we're going to try to work to fix them. But we are not going to fix them. We are not going to fix them by scapegoating people. Because when we do, we lessen each other. We lessen each other. And we're better than that. We're better than that. And so I just want to make sure you understand my view on this. I understand the frustration you feel, and it sounds like some screwy stuff is happening up here. Okay, so I'm going to look into it, all right? But here's the other news. The other news is that each of our municipalities in this state have different problems that they're dealing with and different challenges that they're dealing with, and some are more severe and some are less. That's why I come out here to listen. And so I'm going to come out here and listen, and I'm going to try to do everything I can to fix it. But here's the real truth. Is there are no magic wands in this world, and you know that. You've been in business for 40 years, you know there are no magic wands in the world. The way we're going to fix this problem, if we're going to fix it, is to work hard together to try to come up with a solution to do it, because there is no governor, no president, no anybody who can wave a magic wand and fix some of the problems you're talking about that have accumulated over decades of time, right? So let's work together to try to make sure that we fix the problem. And I appreciate you raising the issue. Yes, ma'am. No, right here. No, this lady right here. The woman who is standing up.
Sorry. My name is Mary Beth. I actually grew up here in West Milford, but I live in Sussex County, another county that you really need to come up and take a look at everything. Okay. I don't even know where I begin and what my priorities are. One is housing. One is your judicial system that you spoke about in your piece. Both of my children have been through the drug court system, which the drug court system is a great program, but we give them help and then we throw them out to the wolves and then we say good luck. And I have my son coming home. I'm a single parent. I've been trying to keep my home. I'm not able to. My mortgage company won't work with me. And I try to do the right thing, and you're punished. And I hear you have some money to help people maybe with mortgages, and I just need to know, how do I do this?
Sure. A few things. First off, you take his card and give us your information. There is a program called the New Jersey Homekeeper Program that we're doing in conjunction with the federal government, where we have originally had about $300 million, about $60 million of that has been distributed already. So we still have about $240 million to distribute to help people through the difficult times, to help them keep their homes, and also help them renegotiate with their banks and their mortgage companies to get it so it's affordable so they don't have to leave their homes. So we'll have somebody from that organization call you if you give that information to try to walk you through it. Yep. I don't know whether you're eligible or not. I don't know there's all kinds of rules, but that's what the program is there for. So that's
the other problem. So I work. And I work very hard, and I do make a decent salary, and I'm not going to apologize for that because I've worked very hard. Sure. But our government wants to penalize my children and not give them funding because their mother makes too much money. My children are adults. My oldest will be 24, and my youngest is 23. So they want to treat them like adults. However, their mother makes too much money, so they can't give them the help that they need. That's why I had to put them through the drug court system. Yep. My younger son, I tried to help on my own. It cost me $14,000. Money, of course, which I didn't have, but they're your children, and you do what you have to do. I have no support from an ex, who's another story that I'll save everyone the gory details on. But I want to do the right thing. I want to stay in my home. I want to pay my mortgage, and I want to give my children an opportunity to get back on their feet. But they can't even find a job.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well,
I could be your own forum, but
well, no, but that's okay. But let's deal with the issues that we can deal with. So first is this program is available to help people who are in problems with their homes and in foreclosure or near foreclosure. So let's see if we can get that program to help you. Secondly, one of the things that we're doing now that we passed this year that I'm proudest of is that for folks who go into the system now, you're talking about your children who are first-time nonviolent drug offenders, phased in over the next 5 years. Every one of those people, instead of going to prison, will go to mandatory inpatient drug rehabilitation for a year.
Well,
and that's not a cure-all for everything, but let me tell you, what we're doing now is we're sending those people to jail. And they go to jail, and drugs get smuggled into jail, and they stay drug addicted, and then we release them for jail, and we wonder why they go back and commit crimes. Because they're drug addicted.
Well, my oldest is actually in a facility right now in Annandale. He's being released after 4 months, which I personally don't think has been long enough. He tells me, Mom, it's horrible. I learned my lesson. I say, Michael, I pray that every day. However, now we're sending him out. He has no job. Of course, I'll bring him back with me, providing he's doing the right thing. But it's a vicious cycle. They have fines that they have to pay. How did these people get a job?
Well, but the bigger point there is that that's why we want the treatment to be a year long. Drugs addiction is a disease that we need to give people the tools to deal with. Now, you can be judgmental about it and say, well, they should have never tried drugs in the first place, and if they didn't, they wouldn't become addicted. There's lots of bad choices people make in life. And I just don't believe that any life is disposable. I don't believe that we just throw lives away. And I think that we're a better society than that. And the war on drugs was a good try. But as a former prosecutor, I'm telling you, it hasn't worked. And so our approach now is going to say, listen, and there's not a lot of states in the country that are doing this, but I think a lot more will do it after we've done it. Let's say we got to give people on their first try the tools for a long enough period of time so they really learn those tools. Because your son, it's not about learning his lesson, right? Right. It's not about learning. That's right. It's not about learning his lesson. It's about learning the tools to deal with his addiction. And all of us in this room, I suspect, have had family members, friends, neighbors, other relatives who have had a problem with alcohol or drugs. And so we all understand that in the main, this is not a problem you just snap your fingers and it goes away. You need to give folks treatment. And by the way, when we put someone in jail for a year, it costs us $49,000 a year to jail someone. It costs us $25,000 a year to give them a year of inpatient drug treatment. So not only is it less expensive in the short run, but in the long run, if that person turns into a productive citizen who can deal with their problems, they're going to become taxpayers when they get employed and contribute to our society both in an economic way and in a spiritual way by being good brothers, good sisters, good husbands, good wives, good sons and daughters that make our society a better place. So it is a challenge that we need to be honest about confronting. It's easy for us to say, hey, just throw them in jail, they broke the law, they should have known better. But I think that has proven not in the main to work. So let's try to save some lives here in the process and make people feel better about who they are and give them the tools to deal with it. Because we don't say to people who have other diseases, you know, we're not giving you any medical treatment, good luck, hope you survive. You know, yet when we talk about drug and alcohol abuse, somehow, you know, because we've made a value judgment that it's wrong and it's illegal, that, you know, we say somehow folks shouldn't get the help that they need. I think if we're going to pay to put them in jail, at least on the first try, we should give them the opportunity to do something different so maybe they can help to get the tools they need to salvage their own lives. And that will make us a much better state and a much better country if we're doing those things than just throwing folks away. So they'll work with you and try to get you some help. My staff is telling me I'm on last question. So these, oh, I know. I probably called some people from over there, but I haven't called any of the young people today at all, which I usually try to do, especially when they take the time to come. So we'll call on you. You're on the aisle. Please stand up and tell me what you got on your mind.
Hi, my name is Sophia Metcalf. I'm Secretary of the West Milford Student Council. I have a few questions as do my counterparts, but I'll just keep it to one so we can keep this nice and short. I'm also the daughter of a teacher, and I was wondering what you think is the most accurate and effective way to evaluate teachers in a classroom if you're going to start paying them with merit pay.
Yeah, I think we've got a system that we're now putting in place in pilot programs across the state that essentially have three elements to the evaluation. First element is peer review. Other teachers watching teachers in the classroom and evaluating how they're performing in the classroom. Second is review by the administration. So principal reviewing the people, all the teachers in his or her school to be able to review how they're doing and what progress they're making. Third is student test scores. How are the students performing in the class? Test them at the beginning of the year, test them at the end of the year. So it's not to an absolute number. You don't say, well, everyone has to get to 90% or else you're not doing a good job, because the fact of the matter is some people may come in at 85%, some people may walk into the classroom at 65%. What we want to see is progress. So that the goal of every teacher should be to do whatever he or she can do to help their students, every one of those students in the class, make progress during the year. We recognize that every student is different. They come from different homes. They come from different backgrounds. They get different levels of support at home in terms of what they need to do. So a teacher is not the only element in determining the success or failure of a student in the classroom. But we know from studies that teachers are the major element in determining that. So if you have an element of it being student test scores, an element of it being peer review, an element being supervisory review or administrative review, we think that's the most effective way to do it. We're piloting that in a number of school districts across the state this year. It will get instituted statewide next year. And we don't have a merit pay program yet. I'd like us to have one. We don't have one yet statewide. But what we are trying to do is to use that in terms of evaluating tenure. So that if a teacher gets tenure now under the new law that we passed after 4 years of teaching, that they have to continue to be evaluated going forward. That you don't assume just because the teacher was good enough to have tenure at year 4, that at year 15 that teacher is still being effective. And so the new system will allow for 4 levels of ratings. Very effective, effective, partially effective, ineffective. If you get 2 years in a row of partially effective, you're eligible to have your tenure taken away. If you get 1 year of ineffective, you can get your tenure taken away. And then the school district has a choice to make. They can provide you with additional training to help get you to the point where you're doing better, or they can ask you to leave. Now, up until this law was passed, the tenure law in New Jersey had been the same for 105 years. We had the oldest teacher tenure law in America that had never been amended or changed. And I just don't believe, and I think now a majority of the people in New Jersey don't believe, that anyone in any profession deserves to get a job for life after 3 years and 1 day without any further evaluation of whether they're being effective or not. And I think that most teachers that I've met have no problem with it because they know they're doing a good job. And they have no problem with being held accountable for what happens inside their classrooms because they don't become teachers to become rich or famous. They become teachers because they love children and they want to see them progress and they want to see them do better and they want to see them learn and succeed. And so this system now, I think, but by the same token, by the way, those good teachers, effective teachers, know who the ineffective ones are in school. They know. They know. And they're diminished by the ineffective teacher's presence in the school. They're diminished by that. So we may get to a point where we have a merit-pay system in parts of the state or all the state. We're not there yet. But I think the first step in that is making the permanency of teaching jobs subject to performance and accountability. And that's the first steps that we've taken. Now, as we move forward, we'll talk about merit pay and other things. And this happens much more slowly than I would like it to, but I got to learn to be patient. So we're trying to go through all these issues because in the end, the most important thing that a state does, in my opinion, at the state level, is to educate our children. And if we don't do that well, the ramifications for us as a state, both socially and economically, are grave. So we got to do better than we're doing right now. In some places, we're doing really well. In some places, we're doing as well as anybody in the country. And in other places, we're doing worse than anybody in the country. And the variance and the difference between the two is disturbing. So we got to try to bring some constancy to that. So I want good teachers to be paid well and to want to stay in teaching and to be able to afford to stay in teaching. And I want ineffective teachers to find another profession because it's too important what they're doing in the classroom every day to allow an ineffective teacher to stay in the front of a classroom because those children in that classroom lose that year. And it's very hard to catch back up. So thanks for the question. Let me just say this before I go. You know, there'll be lots of focus, especially after this election that we're in the middle of now. There'll be lots of focus then on me inside the state because the next election is the governor's election. And so there'll be lots of focus and there'll be lots of people talking about, you know, where the state is and how we're doing and how I've done, and people will microanalyze my poll numbers. And heck, you all know that my poll numbers generally depend on what comes out of my mouth from one day to the next, and that is variable at times. But any politician who tells you don't look at their poll numbers is lying to you. It's like our report card, you know. People tell us in these polls how they think we're doing. Do they like us or not? It's one of the things that you have to look at to see how you're doing. I care less about my poll numbers personally because of that variability, because sometimes I say stuff that gets people angry and then they don't like me for a little while. And luckily, for the most part, they come back, say, yeah, that's just him. We'll put up with it because he's doing a good job. But it's a set of poll numbers that I think are much more important that speak to us as a state. In the last week of the election, before I was elected governor nearly 3 years ago now, they asked New Jerseyans that question that they always ask you if you've ever been called by a pollster, almost right at the beginning of the questioning. They say, do you believe your state's moving in the right direction, or do you think it's off on the wrong track? And in the week before the election in 2009, 19% of New Jerseyans thought we were moving in the right direction. 19%. Less than 1 in 5 of the people who live here believe we were getting it right, believe that we were doing the right thing by each other, that the state was going in the right direction. And so now 3 years later, we've done all these different things. You know, we've cut spending, we've vetoed tax increases, we've taken on, you know, tough issues like tenure reform and pension and benefit reform and interest arbitration reform and all these drivers of expenses in the state. And we've made some friends and we've made some enemies. And we've done some very tough things that has given New Jersey some different notoriety around the country. And, you know, the great news is, I think, that things are getting better in the state, that New Jersey's comeback has begun. It's not done yet by a long stretch, but it's started. And you can feel that things are better in our state now than they were 3 years ago. And you don't need someone to tell you that. You can feel it yourselves in your own families and with your neighbors and your friends. And the great thing about the state's image is that it's so much different than it was 3 years ago. I mean, remember 3 years ago when I would travel around the country as U.S. Attorney, essentially 3 things would get mentioned to me when I said I was U.S. Attorney from New Jersey. The Real Housewives of New Jersey, The Sopranos, and God forbid, the Jersey Shore. Those were the 3 things I'm telling you is the truth that invariably were mentioned to me. And now when I travel around the country, it's so much different. You know, we're getting talked about much more on the evening news and the Sunday talk shows than we're being talked about anymore on Letterman or Leno or Colbert or Jon Stewart. You know, where people are talking about the hard decisions that we're making and the leadership that we're providing to the country. New Jersey. And so what does that mean for all of us? Well, with the tough things we've done and the new image that's creating, now for 12 polls in a row, when they've asked people, and this has happened now for the first time since 2004, and it's happened 12 times in a row now, they asked people in New Jersey, do you think your state's moving in the right direction, or do you think it's off on the wrong track? 53% of New Jerseyans say our state's moving in the right direction now. And it's not about me. That's not about me, it's about you. It's about you. It's about all of you feeling once again like we're in this together. That we're gonna fight for the things that are wrong and try to fix them. But that we're also gonna fight for each other and stand up for each other. That there's so many great things about this state that we shouldn't feel bad about ourselves. We shouldn't feel diminished. Yeah, we've got challenges, so does every other state. We've also got lots of great people here. And you're feeling that once again about each other. And I can sense it from going around the state and talking to folks. And so that's why I love being governor of this state. Because you've got some of the hardest working, toughest people that you're gonna find any place in the country right here. People who love this state because it's where they were born and raised. Because what makes New Jersey great is the tradition of New Jersey. Is mothers and fathers walking with their children on the same streets that they walked on. Is going down to the Jersey Shore in the summer and walking on those same boardwalks, even when you're getting filmed for YouTube yelling at somebody. It's still good. Folks who understand that if we make this state more affordable again, that when your grandchildren have those Little League games or the soccer tournaments, you know, the Christmas concerts or the spring plays, or just those little birthday parties around the kitchen table, that you can be there for that. Because you're still here and so are your kids. That you don't have to become airplane grandparents. You have to get an airplane to go see that because you won't go all the time and you'll miss a lot. And that will tear at the fabric of who we are and who our state's always been. So when I talk about these fights that we need to have, it's not, like I said in the video, it's not just because I'm looking for a fight. Some days, but not most days. I'm fighting for this stuff because it matters, because it's gonna make a difference to us and to our kids and to our grandkids as we go forward. It doesn't mean we're gonna win every fight, but what I know is you can't win the fight unless you're in the fight. And what I've been so heartened by over the last 3 years is that you've been willing to be in the fight with me. And we're doing this together. And the state's getting better because we're working together to do it. And so you've given me the greatest honor and privilege I'll ever have in my life, to be the governor of the state where you were born and raised. And I will tell you, I walk into that state house every day, and I walk in that door, it has my name on it and says governor, and I shake my head. And I say, how the hell did this happen? And if you're standing outside that door someday, you come to Trenton and you're really quiet and you listen down the hall for the Democrats in the legislature, they're saying the same thing. How the hell did this happen? But unfortunately, for totally different reasons. I love this job, and I love doing it every day. And I don't do it perfect every day. And I don't do something great every day, but the great thing about this job is every morning when I wake up, I have a chance to do something great. That's a gift, a great gift that you've given me. And I talk about my mom all the time because I miss her and because she was such an enormous influence on my life. And I know that if my mother were still alive today, to see this circus that my life has become, you know, she would say to me that you owe it to these folks who gave you this great privilege to tell them the truth, to tell them how you really feel and what you really think. And no matter what happens in the next year or so, if I do decide to run for re-election, you all will be in that voting booth, and for some of you may say, man, great, can't wait to vote for this guy. For some of you say, man, can't wait to vote for whoever the other person is. But here's the one thing you won't have to say. You won't be able to say you don't know me. You won't be able to say you don't know who I am and what I'm willing to fight for, what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. That's the way my mother taught me to be. That's what she would expect of me if she were still here. And that's what I try to give you every day. So we're moving back in the right direction. Our state is becoming a great place again. And it's because all of us together are working together to make that happen. So thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you.